All right. Well, good day. My name is Jamillah Lodge, and I'm excited to be here. Today, I'm your official host for today of this special series. BPSU is having a podcast series in honor of International Women's Day 2023. And so happy to have you with us, Lloyquita Symonds. You are the Symonds, the BPSU Assistant General Secretary.
Correct.
And today, we're going to be talking about equity in the workplace, okay?
Yes.
But before we do that, I would love for you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. So, as you said, my name is Lloyquita Symonds. I became the Assistant General Secretary at BPSU in actually October of 2020.
Okay.
I actually started my full-time at BPSU on April 1st, 2020. So the same day the island went into lockdown.
Yes. Oh, joy.
I transitioned to a new full-time post, handed over the presidency, and then came in full-time. Prior to coming into BPSU full-time, I was a social worker for 20 years.
Okay.
I've come through the ranks at BPSU during my time as a social worker. Started as a shop steward, moved right along up through the executive to the presidency. And now here I am today.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here in honor of International Women's Day. You see, we look gorgeous in our purple. Yes, we want to represent. But before we start about equity and why we're here to have a conversation about, can you talk a little bit about the BPSU and its mission?
Yes, so the BPSU was formed in 1952, so we celebrated our 70th anniversary in 2022 with a series of events. Formed by several senior civil servants who banded together because they weren't happy with their terms and conditions of employment. BPSU has grown, and today we represent approximately 3,000 workers in Bermuda, from the public sector through to some private sector companies that provide a public service. We have what we call bargaining units, which means those that we negotiate and form collective agreements with, and we have 27 of those. So we've grown tremendously over the years. Our mission statement is to provide effective labor and community relations. We do that by engaging our membership, developing our membership, and liaising with key stakeholders in the community, because that serves to better not only our members, but the community as a whole.
Right. And we've worked with BPSU in different capacities, BDC, that is, who I work for, for those who may not know. But also, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Women's Committee of the BPSU, and why did you form, when did you form, and what is your mandate?
Well, interestingly enough, in 1984, BPSU sent a group of women to the United Nations, to the Women's Conference, which is actually going on this week at the United Nations as well. And it actually took 4 years since that visit for BPSU to actually create the Women's Committee. So officially the Women's Committee started in 1988. Its mandate hasn't really changed over the years. The mandate has been really to educate our membership on issues affecting women, political issues, socioeconomic issues, financial issues, health issues, and also, which most people don't know, it's also to promote the active involvement of women in the union and support them moving through the ranks. Yeah. Because typically trade unionism is a male-dominated around the world.
Of, right?
It is.
When you think of unions, you think of hard hats and men, typically.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So that has been a mandate, and that mandate hasn't really changed over the years.
Okay. Well, I think it fits right in line with what we're talking about today, which is equity. And so when you say equity, or when we say equity, what does that mean to you?
So when I think of equity, I think of everyone having the tools and resources that they need to be successful, but it may not be the same for everyone.
Right.
it means that where I am may not be where you are, right? But how do we both get to the finish line?
Yes. Yes.
Right? Whereas you may need something different than what I need, but it still gets you to that finish line.
And I think that's a good point, because a lot of people are like, well, equity and equality, what's the difference, right? Aren't they the same thing? What do you say? Are they the same thing?
So I used to have some difficulty with the equity and equality, right? And my coworker actually has this sign up in her office, and it says, equality is everybody getting a shoe.
Right.
Equity is everybody getting a shoe that fits.
Yes, I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
And that has resonated with me. It's a powerful statement, right? Because a lot of times we think that just by giving everybody the same thing,
yes,
right, we've done our job.
We've done our job. That's right.
And we can now walk away.
Yep.
Right? But that may not be what I need to get where everyone else is going.
That's correct. That's correct. You're absolutely right. Especially when, I would say, as a woman, as a Black woman, you start off like way behind the starting line, right?
Just by being a Black woman.
Just by being born like this. And so, when, like you said, you give everybody the same shoe, but if the shoe you gave me is like 4 sizes too big and we're in a race, well, how am I going to get to the finish line, right?
Correct.
So when you talk about giving people the right size shoe, let's use that analogy. What does that mean in terms of the union, like from the union's perspective?
So the union, and I spoke a little bit about this when I spoke about our bargaining units. We create, through the negotiation process, collective agreements.
Okay.
Which seeks to kind of even out the playing field as far as terms and conditions of employment for persons within that bargaining unit.
Right.
Now, what that means is that every collective agreement with a different employer could be different, but it's the same for all the people in that bargaining unit. Right?
Got you.
So that means collective agreement for BEDC, all the staff at BEDC have the same terms and conditions.
Okay.
Right? So that means that there's one standard for all.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
No, it doesn't mean that within that standard everybody doesn't get what they need.
Right.
But what it means is that there's a baseline.
Yes.
Right?
To start with.
Yes.
Right. And so I guess so yes, there is a baseline. Everybody has the shoe. So now, as a woman coming into a mostly male-dominated kind of environment, like unions, right? How do you fight for equity? How do you establish that you are being treated equitably in that type of environment?
So it's about having the equal access to things like promotions.
Okay.
And what that process looks like, right? Making sure there's the same process for everyone. It's also about recognizing what a person's needs are. So you got to be able to have that dialogue, right? And you got to impress upon employers, especially, that you've provided this, but this isn't what that person needs, right? A huge part of unionism is advocacy.
Okay.
Right? So we spend a lot of time being that middle person between the employer and the employee, actually verbalizing what the needs of the employee are.
Okay.
Now, not outrageous, because we also have fair and reasonable, right? Which is very important to us, right? Sometimes our members want things and we have to say, we have to keep it real, right? And say that's unreasonable, right? But it's about what is fair and reasonable and what is equitable.
Right.
Right? So I also think that as far as the union goes, we also ensure that wages are equal, right? Which means that you'll find in a lot of our agreements that we have bands or steps, right, for wages, which is the same for everyone who's doing the same type of job.
Right.
Right? So you know that you can get paid within this range.
Exactly.
Right? And then anything outside of the range is what's negotiated by the BPSU and your employer, right? So you won't find that huge gap that you may find in non-unionized environments.
Right. I was going to say that is one thing, especially me coming from another jurisdiction where we didn't really have that, or working in the private sector, there's no bands, right? So you go into the room blindly negotiating what you think your value is. But historically, statistically speaking, it's always proven that women start way lower than men, you know? And I think a lot of that has to do with like mindset and just helping women to understand the value or their worth. Right. And not being afraid to ask for it.
Yes.
So on that note, when it comes to asking for equity, right? You said the union will advocate on your behalf. And as long as it's a reasonable request, how do you ensure... I guess my question is there ever a scenario where a woman, let's say, comes in and either she's unaware that she should be asking for something? Would the BPSU be like, well, have you considered X, Y, and Z? Or is it always going to be the responsibility of the unioned person, the individual, to come and say, I don't think this is fair. I think this is what I should be receiving in order to be equitable across the board? Do they have to come to the BPSU with that? Or is there ever an instance where you recognize, be like, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. You should.
So it's a two-pronged process,
okay.
Right? So we have shop stewards in every area,
okay,
right, who we consider our eyes and ears in that area, right? Because those of us who work full-time for the union, or even the vice presidents who work on a volunteer basis, are not in every single department or every single workplace.
Okay.
Right? So we rely, number one, on the shop stewards to tell us, hey, this is what's happening. I don't think this is right. I'm not sure this is right. Maybe you need to tell me if this is right. Maybe you need to have a conversation with management to find out what's really going on, but this is what I'm seeing, right? Or it could be the member themselves that's like, I'm not sure really how this should go. This is what happened in the last workplace where I was at, and this is not what's happening here, so I don't know which is right. Or we have regular meetings with management.
Okay.
Right? The union officers have regular meetings with management as touch points. We call them joint consultative committee meetings, where we talk about the workplace and what's going on in the workplace. And shop stewards are actually part of those meetings.
Okay.
Right? And that's kind of where we get the lay of the land.
Right.
We get involved in the policy making for the workplace to ensure that policies are fair and equitable. Right? And we keep our finger to the pulse in those ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. And I'm sure people are who are members of the BPSU are grateful that you guys have the ability to do that, because sometimes saying it by yourself is different than when you have someone to advocate on your behalf, right? Okay, so I'm going to ask you specifically about how the BPSU practice equity as from your perspective, right? So the Women's Committee, I think that's a great thing, right? You recognize that there was a need for the committee, but what other kinds of things are done where it's clear that it's done on purpose and an effort to be more equitable?
So I do think that the advocacy around equal pay strives to be equitable. You did mention that women used to get paid less, and in some instances still today, they still get paid less. That doesn't happen in unionized environments, right? There's also the health and safety aspect, which is something that a lot of people don't think about. So let's say you have a back issue, right? And you need a special chair, right? We will advocate for you to get that special chair so that you are not disadvantaged and when I say disadvantaged in not being able to appropriately, effectively, and efficiently complete your duties.
Gotcha.
Right? Because something as simple as I need a desk that raises so I can stand every 15 minutes and still do my work is important, right? And serves to keep you from falling behind in your duties, which then can lead to performance issues.
Right.
Right? So it's about the needs of our members as individuals and as collectives.
Okay.
In 2017, BPSU also started a diversity committee,
Okay.
which seeks to service our marginalized members. So we
Can I ask you, like, who would be the marginalized members?
So we have LGBTQI members.
Yes. Okay.
Right. So BPSU is categorized as a safe space for those members.
Okay.
Right now, our hall is under renovation. But in having the hall previously, it was a space where they could come, have meetings, and it was a safe space for them to share ideas and to be open, and not just amongst themselves, but also with the rest of us.
Right.
Right. So I think that there's more for us to do as a
Yes.
union, right? We have just had our 8th Triennial Delegates Conference, and we have a new executive that was sworn in on Friday. Some of them are the same. But it may be time to pause and pivot and see what we can do further to further create equity in the workplace. Yes.
Well, I mean, I think that in itself is progressive, because I do think that Bermuda, we can sometimes be classified as being conservative, right? So with the BPSU representing such a wide population in Bermuda, right? I'm a member of the BPSU. I think that it is great that you've recognized that there are members who may be marginalized and have put in or established a committee to directly support them with getting equitable playing field in the workforce. Now, I have one last question for you, because we're talking about women. Okay. And you have years of experience, which you have shared. But for those young women who are now entering the workforce, maybe they will be BPSU members, maybe they will be working in the private sector. What do you say to those young women who are like, may not even realize that there's a difference between equity and equality, to encourage them to advocate for themselves or advocate for equity as they enter the workplace?
So the first thing I would do is educate around equity and equality, right? I think that there are some cultural nuances in every workplace that may make it difficult for people to feel like they have a voice. Right? It's important to find your voice, right? It's important to put yourself in spaces where you can have a voice so that you can find your voice. Right? It's important to align yourself with people who have a voice, right? Who can mentor you into finding yours. Right? I think that is the key. For a long time, I feel like even those of us who are in seats of change, and I do consider myself to be in a seat of change,
I
right?
would agree, yes.
Sometimes we don't want to upset the apple cart, right? It's kind of like, okay, I went through it. Yeah, well, she got to go through it too. You know what I mean?
You got to pay your dues.
You know what I mean? And the reality is that I have a duty to push and pull my sister.
I like that. Yes, I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a seat for all of us at the table, and if not, we build our own table.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? I tell the men that sit around the table, I don't want your seat.
Yes.
You don't have to worry about me taking your seat. I want my own seat, and I'm deserving of my own seat.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
But for some of us, it takes a while to get there.
That is very true. Like, some of us still aren't there yet.
Yeah.
So it's forever, I believe, a work in progress. But I like how you push and pull, right? Because I think it's necessary. Sometimes they don't want to go, like you said. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to upset the apple cart. But if you know that it's necessary, it's like, it's not just about you. It's about the future generation of women who are going to come after you. You're going to have your own daughters at some point, possibly. And you don't want them to necessarily have to go through the same struggles that you did. You like to see that the bar is being pushed or moved, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I love love that. This has been a short and sweet
Thank you.
conversation. I'm looking forward to speaking with some other colleagues today.
Yes.
And we're going to continue to explore equity versus equality in the workplace and how we as women can continue to push and pull each other to make sure that we are achieving for ourselves, but equity for all other women who come behind us. So, Lloyquita, thank you so much. And I look forward to having future conversations with you.
Most definitely. Thank you very much for allowing me to be a part of this and be in this space.
Yes.
It isn't what I normally do. I'm normally behind the scenes, like, directing everyone.
Yeah.
But it's an eye-opener, and it's important, right? It's important that we get the word out there, and it's important that we encourage each other and also encourage ourselves.
That's
Self-talk
right.
is important as well.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
So thank you, and I do appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. And thank you for selecting me to do this, because I was like, well, I can do it. I do it.
Yeah.
But, I can do it for you guys, too, because it is important, recognizing women on International Women's Day is important, but in general, this is information that we should be sharing with each other to support each other. So,
Yes.
well, thank you so much.
Thank you.